Well, hello and welcome to the first, you know, episode this year, 2026. It's had well, what can I say? It depends on your perspective in life. A fascinating start this year. I mean, we are what? We are on the, was it 17th, 18th of January, and already so many things in the world, politics, things happening, which I don't think anybody possibly could have predicted. And in the medical world, of course, there's lots of stuff going on. So, from my own perspective in diabetes, some good news around finances and stuff. So that's been good. There's been a GMC report talking about how things about referrals based on iniquity of color of your skin has improved. Some good stuff. But this episode is going to be about something which is very close to my heart and something which I have been quite heavily engaged in over the last week or so. And it's been the Medical Prioritization Bill that's come through as regards local graduates, what will happen with jobs, etc. So there's many layers to it. I think let's say something very clearly at the outset. There is a absolute horlicks of a workforce plan in this country, no question about it. You know, you've got medical schools expanding or promises to be made expanded without any future of what jobs they will go into. You have a situation whereby, due to some reason, a lot of workforce planners basically got a lot of other professionals to or other healthcare qualified people to come around and believe they can step up and do the role of doctors. The physician assistant saga is well known and recognized. You need a national review to show that was not quite the way. And now we've got the whole conversations around ANPs and ACPs, about should they be doing a medical registrar role? Should they be seeing undifferentiated patients? Who regulates them? But take a step back. It's all designed and all done either with some amazing plan in mind to sort of lessen the dependence on doctors full stop, and thereby having a lot of these professionals come through, or it's just unplanned nonsense, and as a result of which everybody's in a bit of a soup. So, forgetting about the divides between different groups, the reality is that the workforce projection done in the much touted long-term workforce plan is already in shambles. The government already called it an act of fiction, according to the King's Fund article. And I suspect the number and projections that will come through now are going to be vastly different from what it was in 2023. And that in itself says its own story. Anyway, taking a step back, so the medical prioritization bill comes through, and let's take the basic principle, having local graduates prioritized to getting jobs. It will not come as a shock or a surprise to anybody that that has mostly been the case for many, many people in this country who are international medical graduates who have eventually become in the system higher up, and that they would always be second priority to local graduates. And frankly, that's fine. It is what it is. And but because of the mess I said, so this was coming. People have been talking about local graduate prioritization, etc. And in principle, there's no problem with it. It is the UK. If you come to this country, you have to accept the local graduates will have a better and more higher chance to getting a job than you. And even though it's been touted as, oh my God, that are we saying that international medical graduates thereby take the dregs? Well, depends as to what you see as dregs. Like, a lot of people, local graduates don't want to become general practitioners, or at least that's what the evidence base says. I can tell you in our field of diabetes endocrinology, it certainly is the case. That is very heavily populated with international medical graduates, and we rarely get local graduates applying for it. It's changing, but that has been the dynamic. So, it's not as simple as that. But my issue with that is none of that. My issue is, I think if I break down the bill, the first thing it says from 2026 for foundation program training, it'll be local graduates who are prioritized. No issues with that. It was coming, and that's what it is. And then you take a jump ahead. Let's take 2027, where it says that it again will be local graduates, and for any international medical graduates, it will be defined by experience as defined by the Secretary of State. I suspect it's not the Secretary of State who's going to sit through and go through every CV and determine it. It's likely going to be the Department of Health's workforce team who are going to do it and setting up what is defined as proper experience based on, I suspect, where jobs are, where you want to do, and I don't think there's going to be a simplistic cutoff on that. You could argue it could be 2 years or 3 years of NHS experience before you apply for a specialist post or a specialty post, but I suspect that will be much debated. And I think, that wasn't available when I was applying. But I was, for example, from what I understand, international medical graduates can apply directly to specialty posts without even working a day here. And I don't think that's quite right either. So I think tightening those up makes sense. Then you go on to the second bit, which is the bit and the most controversial bit, where people are like, in UK graduates, definitely in the priority group, along with the international medical graduates who have got an ILR. Now, this is what I don't understand: is either you take the whole, hog and bite the bullet and say we're just not going to let international medical graduates be a priority group. And I suspect lots of people have looked at it from a legal perspective and felt that they couldn't do it. Or you include international medical graduates who have been here for the last 3, 4 years. And the reason for that is that to get indefinite, right to remain or leave to remain, you need to be here for 5 years. So what about the international medical graduate who's been here for 3 years, who works in a post, got enough experience? Why are they being excluded? That makes no sense to me. And I think that's what needs to be looked at. So either you completely cut it off, take the big bold step and take the consequences of that, or you include everybody over the last 3, 4 years or whatever it needs to be. You can't just, I absolutely accept that you send the signal out and you say that, you know what, if you are in, let's say, India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, Nigeria, whichever are the top countries, and you say, right, if you're in these countries and you've given PLAB and you haven't got a day's experience in this country, you haven't arrived here, then you can't apply for a specialty post. I get that. People can then make the decision what they want to do, whether they want to come here and work in certain posts, trust grade posts, locally employed doctor posts, get the experience and then apply. And it's also very relevant for people who haven't done the PLAB, because you can decide based on the workforce situation, you know what, I don't want to spend time doing a trust grade job for X years before I can apply. So, do you know what, I'm not going to take the PLAB full stop. So I think there's a lots of good things in the bill. I think it sets the tone for a lot of things to come. But I think there's a huge gray area right now about 2026, which needs to be looked into. And I think it also is a little bit odd because, as far as I understand, lots of rounds of applications have already begun and people have got their letters. So how do you apply that? What happens? And I've got a theory, because I worked with NHS England in general, and you've seen that with the PA situation as well. A lot of times, I think central bodies basically put something out and then sit back and let things just settle, just see what happens. So you can see with the PA things, we talked about the Leng review. Implementation has been, well, patchy. I mean, you look at the Royal College of Physicians, they did an interim document and said they would make it more formal after the Leng review. 6 months have gone, nothing has happened. It seems to be a philosophy of a lot of organizations just to see how the dust settles rather than being very clear about what they want to do and thereby creating the confusion, the chaos. Some of it is because they're not sure what they want to do. Some of it is because they're worried about legal challenges. And some of it is because, well, they just want to pick up the pieces after it's fallen or whatever be the case. And I suspect a lot of about 2026 is about that because nobody's quite sure what to do. So they put it out there. And I think a lot of the applications will happen without a huge amount of changes, if I'm honest. So I would say to people who are international medical graduates, just apply, and see what happens. I think 2027, I think it's probably going to become more clear. And I think people have the time, I think, all the relevant bodies to define what experience actually means. And I think that's fair. So that's my view on the whole medical graduate prioritization bill. I think fundamentally it's right. I think it's making the right moves, making it very clear for people who want to apply to come to this country and decide what they want to do. I think it leaves a group of IMGs in the lurch, not everybody, and I think that needs to be looked into to, as I said, make it fair and that point of view. But I've got some other theories as well. My personal view is that this is not new. We would like to rely less on international doctors, and I suspect, again, a theory, that the whole rump of promoting non-doctor roles to become doctors was driven by that. And I think if you look at a lot of international medical graduates, they fill out locally employed doctor roles, trust grade roles, doing a lot of jobs that trusts need to survive, and a lot of jobs that local graduates don't want to do. We all know about those general medical wards that nobody wants to staff, and I think a lot of the PAs and ANPs and ACPs being built up to fill that. The only problem is that I think then they got devolved into you can also do more specialist roles, and thereby that's caused a problem. I think, for example, if you see PAs and the GPs, I think because GP lots of posts are filled by international medical graduates, so I think a lot of the drive has been let's try and lessen the dependence. We'll get PAs, and thereby, we still local is great. It doesn't matter about the quality, doesn't matter about the training. We've got the rhetoric of local is good for right or wrong. That's my theory. Um, and I think the other thing to mention is some of the organizations. I mean, spare a thought for the General Medical Council. They've already produced a paper showing about the drop in income. So there's a paper showing the massive rise in income they've had, and then there's a financial paper published where they expect their incomes to be halved, which is not surprising. I'm going to put a flutter out there, so to speak, that I think the GMC is probably looking at possibly, I don't know, becoming the super regulator. They've already gone into non-doctors, which are PAs. So, given the fact that there is a huge gray area around ANPs and ACPs, because the Nursing Medical Council has already expressed concern about all these roles. For example, HCPC are very clear about physios doing work outside their base profession and their non-regulation of that. I suspect the GMC will be looking at becoming a super regulator to, doing that sort of role. Become more financially stronger or recoup the money you lose via plan. And that's my theory. I may be wrong. So yeah, there's that. And then you've got the colleges, and I think the colleges, as I said in my recent BMJ article, I think the colleges are caught because the colleges don't know what to come out and say. If you look at the responses from the Royal College of Physicians, the Royal College of General Practitioners, there's some sort of like lovely lines about how they all value IMGs and stuff. Not really anything concrete as to what to do with the people left in the lurch because I don't think they know. And let's be honest, a lot of the Royal College physicians and Royal College of General Practitioners statements are devised by a communications team, which is built on let's just make sure we're not sued and make sure it's all very politically correct. And of course, stay in the tent. That doesn't surprise me, but I do have an issue with the Royal College of anybody's approach of towards IMGs and love being can you come around and do all these courses that we run and get a certificate from us and have a fellowship, etc., which is, devised around money. And then when it comes down to actually supporting people, people do this. And I say this, I was in the Royal College of Physicians and the International Medical Graduates document was written by me. And I do remember how shall I put it, the lackadaisical the whole thing was towards IMGs and LEDs. So anyway, so that's what it is. So I think I would finally finish by a few points to everybody concerned. I think to the and I'm very grateful to the Department of Health and General Medical Council who have at least, had a communication about the concerns I've raised, and I appreciate that. I really do. And as I've said to all of them, think about what you want to do for the information for people in other countries. Don't make them do exams and spend the money and come here on false pretenses. I think that's number one. Number two, you need to either take bold step of saying all IMGs are out, or you include those who are already here over the last 3, 4 years. You've left your country, you're here away from your family, you spent your money, you've done your exams, and now you can't just turn around and say, well, that's just tough. I think, I don't know what the legal score on that one is, but I do know that's just morally wrong. So either go the whole hog or don't do it. Think about that. And from 2027, make it very clear what your definition of experience is. Publish very clearly in a public platform what the specialty posts are like, where local graduates are applying, and thereby saying to international medical graduates, these are not the posts you might want to look at, but these are other areas. And finally, try and clear all these confusion that you have around ANPs and ACPs and PAs, because that's not fair on any of them either. You're filling them with hope that they will go onto these jobs and building trajectories which may not exist in the world of all this digital revolution and AI and all that stuff that people want to do. So that's honestly my piece of advice for what is worth to all these people. To the Royal Colleges, I would say have a little bit more honesty about where you see in IMGs, and if you're going to use them for raising money around fellowships, fine, no problem, say that. But either stand by them or don't stand by them. These sort of halfway houses are not really great. To local graduates, I would say totally get it. But IMGs are not your enemy. IMGs are here to sort of help you. They are with you, your colleagues. They are also running the wards and stuff with you guys. And you know, not a bad idea to step away from the whole "we don't like foreigners" rhetoric, because frankly, you know, you all are trying, and you're all a victim of rank poor workforce planning by all concern. And I actually wrote a piece of the BMJ 10 years ago, a decade ago, when Jeremy Hunt, sorry, Sir Jeremy Hunt nowadays, wrote about more medical school places and less dependence on foreign doctors. Well, a decade later, we're still here, and that probably says it all about how people have taken things forward or lack of it with any sort of planning. So, to local graduates, things are happening, things are changing. It won't happen overnight. That's not how it works. So, but people are listening to, quite rightly, to what you're saying and the taxpayers' money. So that's my appeal. And finally, to international medical graduates here, yeah, some of us will stand up and speak for you. It's not a problem. I think those of you who are here, I think you have a case, you have a point, and we're going to try and make the point for you guys that as well as much as you can. But do have a think about your future in this country. I think if you know what you want to do, where you want to go, is there a future for you, and how people will survive. I think if you are in your base country and still haven't come here, think about whether you should do the plan. Have some informed choice and be very careful about taking on non-plab routes as to how they appear because you've seen some of the exploitation that happens. So just be aware of that. And that's pretty much what I wanted to say. So that's it, the first episode of Karmic for this year, 2026. We always, I think people say, why do I bother? Doesn't affect me. None of my kids are involved in this whole saga, doctors and all that. So why do I bother? Well, I bother because some of us need to bother. If we all gave up everything saying, why bother? I think nothing will change. Sometimes you need to bother. So I do bother. And I'll try and just raise my voice. As I said, I've done a BMJ blog. I've spoken to all the relevant people. I've used all my social media platforms. Hey, I've even been on Reddit. And I'm doing this as well. So whoever listens, listens. What we can do, we try. So hey, thank you very much for listening as ever. And yeah, so we shall see how it all pans out. So best of luck to all concerned. But yeah, try and keep the pace as we go along. No point in also listening to people who try to divide people based on where you